Then came the recordings, the drone footage, the violation notices, the emails from Elliot's USB drive, the surveillance photos, the voicemail. The whole web of manipulation and misuse laid bare like a blueprint for control disguised as regulation. The enforcer who remained in town was called next, and while his demeanor tried to stay tough, it cracked halfway through when he was asked under oath whether he knew the HOA had no real enforcement authority under county law. He hesitated, then admitted he didn't. He said Karen told him they did. Said she promised legal protection. And when asked why he kept working after learning otherwise, his answer was simple and damning. Because she said the judge wouldn't risk making it public. That was the moment Karen looked up at me, just briefly, and I saw it. The flicker of realization, the internal collapse, the slow-motion understanding that she had grossly underestimated not just who I was but who Dana was, and what we were willing to do when someone crossed the wrong line. The final nail came not from us but from the state housing oversight officer who took the stand last, holding a thick stack of reports and confirming that the HOA under Karen's leadership had violated at least 6 state codes, including failure to maintain public records, hiring unlicensed private security without consent, financial misreporting, and abuse of homeowner right. The judge recessed for 2 hours to review the final statements, and Dana and I stepped outside into a gathering of neighbors who were waiting like a crowd at the edge of a storm, unsure if the worst had passed or if another clap of thunder was coming, and when they saw us, they didn't ask for updates, didn't swarm, they just stood with us, quiet, present, supportive in the way people are when they've been carrying something heavy for a long time and finally get to set it down. When the hearing resumed, the judge returned with clarity, no hesitation in her tone. She ruled in our favor on every count. The HOA's enforcement actions were deemed unlawful. The private enforcers were banned from operating in the county pending further criminal investigation. The HOA board was dissolved temporarily, placed under state supervision until a full audit could be completed. Karen was fined personally and professionally, and Dana, as the victim of assault under fraudulent authority, was awarded damages and a formal apology from the board itself. The courtroom didn't erupt in cheers. It wasn't that kind of victory, but you could feel the air change, like something unspoken had lifted, a pressure released. Karen's lawyer packed his briefcase quickly, his face unreadable. Karen didn't stand. She just sat there, hands clenched in her lap, staring down at the floor like the tiles had answers that the law had taken from her. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look her way again. Dana and I walked out together, hand in hand, not like winners of a war, but like survivors of something more subtle, more insidious, something that hadn't just threatened our property or our peace, but our dignity. The sheriff met us at the bottom of the steps. He didn't say much, just patted my shoulder, then turned to Dana and said, "You held strong. Proud of you." She smiled, small but real. Later that evening, back at the cabin, the porch lights came on as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting that soft golden glow across the lake, and for the first time in what felt like months, the silence around us wasn't tense or watchful, it was peaceful. Dana poured 2 glasses of wine. I turned off my phone. We sat on the porch swing, not talking much, just letting the stillness sink in. The chickens made soft noises in the coop. The goats settled down. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, then stopped. And in that moment, it wasn't about laws or lawsuits or even justice. It was about recovery. About rebuilding not just what had been threatened, but the quiet we'd always come here to find. Karen would face more consequences in time. The board would be rebuilt with honest voices. But for now, this chapter had closed, and we had lived through it with our integrity intact. That, more than any ruling or check or headline, was the victory worth remembering. A few weeks after the ruling, the mountain ridge seemed to exhale, like the land itself had been holding tension somewhere deep in the roots of the trees and was finally letting it go, and Dana and I began to understand what true peace looked like. Not the kind you chase with silence or fences, but the kind that shows up quietly once you've defended everything that matters. The cabin, for all the chaos it had weathered, remained untouched in the ways that counted. The wood still creaked the same way under our feet. The wind still bent the pines outside the same way at dusk. The porch swing still groaned when we both sat on it with a blanket, her head against my shoulder and the dogs curled near our feet. But inside us, something had shifted. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pride. It was the deep, still knowing that we hadn't let fear dictate our lives, that when confronted with injustice dressed up as authority, we'd stood our ground without losing ourselves. Word spread fast across the county. I didn't talk about it much in court, and most people were polite enough not to bring it up, but every now and then, someone would nod a little deeper when passing me in the hallway, or leave a handwritten note on my office desk saying thank you, not just for the ruling, but for showing that you didn't need to yell to be strong, and you didn't need to threaten to get justice. Dana, for her part, took it as a kind of quiet mission. She began helping other homeowners in the area understand their right. Not in any formal way, just conversations over coffee or while walking by the lake. People came to her now. They brought her stories of how they'd been harassed or fined unfairly or made to feel small in their own homes, and she listened without judgment. She didn't promise them courtroom wins or legal miracles. She just told them what she'd learned, what she'd endured, and what she now knew they were entitled to. And that, somehow, was enough to make people feel a little braver. The state board installed a temporary oversight committee for the HOA, and Elliot, now fully resigned but still invested in seeing things made right, volunteered to help rebuild the governance with actual community participation. I supported it from the sidelines. So did Dana. No need to lead. Just needed to watch and make sure the power stayed where it belonged, with the people who actually lived here. As for Karen, her name stopped appearing in public minutes after a while. The fines drained her standing. The lawsuits drained her finances. But what truly unraveled her was the silence. No one returned her calls. No one defended her anymore. The vacuum she had once filled with fear and fake control had collapsed into nothing. Last I heard, she sold her property to a young couple who brought chickens, 2 toddlers, and a Great Dane named Beans. Dana made them a pie their first week. I helped them move a wood stove. Life resumed. Not perfectly, not instantly, but gradually, like a season changing in slow motion. I still remember the moment it really sank in, that it was over, truly over. It was a Saturday afternoon. Dana was gardening, hands deep in the soil, hair tied up in a messy knot, humming some tune that didn't have words. I was chopping wood. The sun was warm. There were no cars watching from the trees. No clipped notes on the gate. No dread in our lungs. Just the rhythm of normal life, reclaimed in full. She looked up, squinting against the light, and said, "It's strange. I thought I'd feel angry longer." I nodded and wiped my forehead. Me too. But I think we burned it all off in the fight. And that was the truth. We had given everything necessary to end what had tried to poison our home. There was no bitterness left because we hadn't let it rot us from the inside. We'd acted, step by step, day by day, until justice wasn't just a word but a lived thing, something we could sit beside on the porch and trust again. A few months later, the county invited me to speak at a legal ethics seminar. I declined. Not because I wasn't honored, but because I felt the work was done. Let others write papers about what happened. Let the journalists trace the timeline. For me, the real legacy wasn't in the ruling or the headlines. It was in the fact that I could look my wife in the eyes every day and know I hadn't failed her when it counted. That I hadn't let the row by war in court make me forget the man I was outside of it. That I hadn't let fear make me passive or rage make me reckless. That I'd chosen clarity over chaos, even when chaos was knocking at our gate. Dana eventually took the scarecrow down, the one in the bathrobe that said "Don't make me call the judge." She replaced it with a small birdhouse and a sign that just said "Welcome." Because the war was over. The land had been defended. And peace, when it comes honestly, doesn't need to shout. It just stays. And we did too. Not because we had to, not because we won, but because this was always our home. And no one, not a clipboard queen or a fake badge or a coward with a voicemail, would ever take that from us again.